Hello everyone and welcome back. In this lesson we're going to talk about component inputs. So as we have seen in the last lesson, we now have here 3 instances of the course card component. All this text here is the same and the image is also the same. We would like to give to each course card a different title and image. And let's see where we could get the data for that. If you open here our Angular course root repository and then open here the source folder, you're going to see that there is a TypeScript file here called dbdata.ts. If we click on it, we're going to see that it contains here a series of courses. So each of these JavaScript objects that we see here corresponds to a given course. Let's see how can you use this to print to the screen one course card for each of the elements that we have here. The first thing that we have to do is to make the data available to the template. The template consumes data that is available here at the level of the component as a member variable. So let's say that we're going to define here a variable called courses that is going to contain a few of the courses here available in this array. Let's say that we want to take here the courses number 1, number 2 and number 3. We can make this data available at the level of the application component so that we can add it to the screen by adding member variables here at the level of this component. Let's say that we want to make available the data for this course, then we define here a variable called core course and we assign it the first element of the courses array. We can do the same for a couple of other courses. Let's define here, for example, one for RxJS and the other for NGRX. So here we have 3 member variables defined. Any of these member variables are available for being used here at the level of the template. Let's try this out. We are going to add here an age1 tag and we're going to use here the Angular template interpolation syntax and we're going to try to access the description of the core course. If we now reload the application, we are going to see that indeed we are using here the title of the first course. If by some reason we would like to print instead the title of the second course, we just have to use the second variable that we have defined here. If we replace core course with RxJS course and reload our application, we are going to see that now we have the title of the second course here in our courses array. So as you can see, in order to be able to use some data in our template, we need to first assign it to a member variable at the level of a component. If we don't do that first, then the data will not be visible here at the level of the template. Now, instead of printing out here the description of the first course, what we would like to do is to pass the description as an input of the course card component. We would like to do something like this. We would like to define here a custom input property called title, and inside it somehow we would like to pass in here the RxJS course description. As we have seen before, the Angular syntax for inputs is the square bracket syntax. So this says to Angular that the content here inside these double quotes is to be interpreted as a JavaScript expression that is going to be evaluated in the context of the application component. Now the question is how to add this input property title to the course card. We can do so by defining here a member variable, which will be a string at the level of the course card component, and we want to annotate it with the Angular core input decorator. This way, Angular will know that this is an input property of the course card element. With this in place, we are now passing in here the description of the course. What we want to do now is to use the title here at the level of the course card component template. In order to do that, we do the same as we were doing here in our application component. We are going to use here the Angular double curly brace syntax for interpolating here an expression, and we are going to access here the title property that is present here in the context of the course card component class. So let's try this out. If we now reload our application, we are going to see that for the first card that we have defined here in our list of cards, we still have here the RxJS in practice course description. Actually, I wanted to pass in here the core course description, so let's quickly fix that. We reload the application and we can see that we have here the correct title. The other two cards, however, are not displaying anything. And this is because the title property for these two other cards has not been defined. So this means that each of the course card components has its own data scope. There is an instance of the course card component for each of the courses. Here we have the title with this value, but here this value is not defined, so we have here an empty string. Let's now change here our template and pass in here the other course descriptions. We're going to add here in the second card the title of the RxJS course, and here we're going to pass in the title of the NGRX course. And now by reloading here our cards, we can see that we have the titles as expected. First the core deep dive, then RxJS, and then NGRX. Now the next thing that we would like to do is to change the course image for each of the cards. So we would like to pass to the component this second property here, the icon URL. We would also like to change here the long description of the course so that it corresponds to the text that we have here. So one way of doing it would be to pass to this course card component two extra properties. We would go here to the course card component and we would add here a couple of new properties. We're going to do this in a different way. We are going to instead pass as an input to the course card component the complete course object in one go with all its properties. For that, we are going to be using here a type definition that we will find here in the model folder. If you open the course.ts file, you're going to see that we have here a very simple interface defined that defines a course type. This is a very practical way of defining custom JavaScript object types in a type-safe way. As we will see, this is going to give us auto-completion at the level of our component classes and even at the level of the template. Right now, we want to refactor our course card component to take as input. Instead of only the course title, we want to take as input a complete course object that we are going to import here from the model folder. Now moving to the template of our course card component, this variable here is no longer present in the course card component class. Instead, we have available the course object. So we can now access the title of the course by auto-completing here the property that we want. We have here all the properties available at the level of the template, and we can now choose here course.description. The same way that we have printed here the description of the course, we can also access here the course image. So the source of this image is no longer going to be here an hard-coded value. Instead, we are going to pass it the value of the course image. We're going to again access the course object, and we're going to see that in our autocomplete list we have available the icon URL property. In a very similar way, using an interpolation expression, we are going to be able to pass in here the long description of the course. Now, in order to view the free courses on the screen, all we have to do is go back here to our application component template, and instead of filling in the title property, we are going to instead fill in the course property for each of the courses. For the first card, we want to pass in the core course, for the second, the RxJS course, and for the third, the NGRX course. If we now try this out, we are going to see that our data is being correctly displayed as expected. As we can see, the input syntax with square brackets for passing input data to a custom component, it's exactly the same syntax that we use for defining a property of a standard HTML element, such as, for example, an image tag. The syntax is consistent in both cases. Next, what we're going to cover is component outputs. How to generate custom events from our custom components.